Apologies, with Councillor Tony Richardson as substitute. Councillor Cassidy?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Howson?
Yes, thank you. I've got everything.
Thank you. Councillor James?
Yes, I can see and hear, and I believe I have all the papers.
Thank you. Councillor Little?
Yes to all.
Thank you. Councillor Prince?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Tennant?
Present, and I have the paperwork.
I'm here as well, Denise, Councillor Young.
All right, thank you, Mike. That's great. Are there any other councillors joining the meeting I have not called? That now concludes the roll call, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Point one, apologies for absence. I've already received absence notice from Councillor Stephen Niggers-Boucher. Number two is receive any declaration of interest by members. Doesn't appear to be the case. Okay, number three, minutes 3.1, minutes and decision record of the meeting held on the 1st of December 2020. And 3.2 to receive the minutes and decision record of Emergency Planning Joint Committee held on the 2nd of March 2021. Are there any comments? Any councillors? No? Okay, we'll take that as accepted. Thank you. There's no budget and policy framework items, so we go to number 5.1. Key decision, local transport plan programme. We'll go to Kieran Bostock.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. The purpose of this report is to inform committee members on the current position on the local transport plan and to identify the potential for new schemes for the next financial year. This is an annual report that's brought before committee every March. Background to this report: this is the third local transport plan which runs from 2011 to 2026 and sets out how we will deliver a safe and sustainable transport system within Hartlepool. The funding from Local Transport Plan 2 to Local Transport Plan 3 was significantly reduced, but this allowed us to explore opportunities to develop and work with partner organisations. Within the Local Transport Plan, there is a delivery plan which focuses on more specific issues on a shorter timescale. The current delivery plan runs from 2015 to 2021. An update of the delivery plan is therefore required. However, there remains considerable uncertainty from government regarding the use of delivery plans, including the level of funding that will be allocated to local authorities. This obviously poses difficulties in identifying schemes to support the Council's strategic aims. And whilst this report is prepared on the assumption of similar levels of funding will continue, this remains a risk to the future delivery of schemes. The ongoing pandemic has also had a significant impact on the aspects of the 2021 programme, both in terms of funding and also the Council's ability to deliver works. The construction industry was stood down for lengthy periods during this reporting period, and this also impacted on our ability to construct local safety schemes and also source materials. The delivery plan itself forms part of the Council's local infrastructure plan, which in turn feeds the local plan. And a detailed update to the relevant sections of the infrastructure plan will be undertaken once the revised delivery plan is undertaken. Section 4 outlines the proposals. For all the challenges this financial year has posed, we have still seen some significant progress on a number of schemes and initiatives. There's a lot listed within the report, so I'll not go through each line verbatim, but what I will do is give you a quick summary. The first one being the major road network bid, which is currently with the Department for Transport, who are currently assessing the outline business case. We are in the process with the combined authority of undertaking a train station feasibility study, which will look to deliver significant improvements to the station itself, bring back the second platform into operation, and ultimately increase capacity through the train station. On the cycle side of things, we've seen further improvements between the link between Hartlepool and Wynyard, with a section between Brenda Road and Burn Road recently being completed, while the section from Burn Road to the transport interchange is currently being undertaken detailed design. In August 2020, we commenced our trial of the e-scooter initiative. The trial has gone from strength to strength, and we now have 65 scooters dotted around the town. In the last week of February, we saw 2,500 miles completed on these scooters, with the average journey length being just under 4 miles. On the ground, we have seen the signalisation of the Meadows roundabout in Wynyard completed recently, which easily now connects pedestrians between both sides of Wynyard, and this is a scheme that's been very well received by residents. The Council's road accident records are at the lowest level, and this is through the continued implementation of our safety schemes, our education programme, and working with our partners in police. On the outset of the pandemic, we received funding for the Emergency Active Travel Funding, which saw initiatives come forward, including the temporary widening of footpaths, the provision of cycle and parking facilities in a number of schools, the installation of cycle counters, and vegetation and clearing works of our cycleways. A summary of the works identified for delivery during this financial year, as well as a proposed programme for next year, is appended to Appendix 2. As has been the trend in recent years, the level of demand for safety schemes does outweigh the budget on offer, and therefore a prioritisation matrix is utilised. This allows schemes to be prioritised on the basis of requirement and need, and members will receive a further update on the local safety schemes in due course. Moving on to financial considerations, all the works will be funded through the LTP allocation from central government, and this is expected to be around 719,000. The allocations for this year and next year are appended to Appendix 1. Moving on to risk implications, a number of the schemes listed for delivery this financial year are expected to slip into next year for the reasons previously outlined. However, there is no restrictions on the funding carryover of these. Finishing off with the recommendations, it is recommended that members note the works and schemes delivered during 2021 and improve the anticipated budget breakdowns for 2022. The reasons for this recommendation are to facilitate the continued development of our local transport delivery programme. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kieran. Before I bring councillors in, I would like to express for myself as chair to express my personal thanks to the team for the works that they've done over the last year, which has been without doubt an incredibly challenging year in terms of not just with COVID, but of course the supply chains and all the rest of it that come with the infrastructure works that we had planned to do. So that's particular personal thanks for that. I'm really pleased to see the 4.3 railway station developments and in particular happy to see extra works being done on the Western Growth Corridor, which is good for future infrastructure, jobs and investment for the town as we go forward. So that's what I'd like to say on this point at the moment. I'm very supportive of everything that's been put forward for next year, and thanks for everything that was done over the last year that we just had. So I have councillors interested. Just check the order. So I believe it was Councillor Prince who came in first.
I'll know.
Councillor Prince.
I have a couple of questions, but I would like to echo what you just said, John. As somebody who doesn't drive and uses public transport, getting to places like Darlington and Durham that aren't that far away, it's an absolute nightmare. To think that we could maybe improve that for everybody in the town would be phenomenal. And I do think you guys have had such a job this year. I can't even imagine. Can I ask, how many bus stops do we actually own? I didn't know that we owned bus stops until I read this.
Let's have a look. I don't know the exact figure. I will come back to you after the meeting on that one. But in terms of bus shelters, so we've got a contract with Clear Channel at the moment, who any bus shelter that's got advertisement on is basically owned by Clear Channel. Any that is just a standard bus shelter remains the responsibility of the authority. But I'll come back to you after the meeting with some actual figures.
No, that's yeah. I'd like the figures, but that's a really nice answer.
Yeah,
Thank you, because it makes it easy for me as well. And then, am I allowed to ask another, Chair?
Of course. Yep.
There are a couple of things that are on this appendix that I really think that we could do with looking at Throston Grange on them, but I've noted quite a few. Would it be okay, because lots of them say additional schemes to be identified, and I think that the Throston Grange estate could do with some of these. Would it be okay, instead of just going through loads of things with you now, if I sent an email after the meeting to sort of say where I think that we could possibly look at these items?
Absolutely. So what happens from this report? This gives us the budget breakdown in the new municipal year. So probably June, July time, we'll bring a separate report back to this committee, which identifies individual specific local safety schemes, and they're at the requests of ward members, accident data, speed data, and members of the public. So anything you want to feed into that process, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Prince. I'm going to go to Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to, well, I echo the comments that have been made. I think that the team under Kieran's leadership actually works exceptionally well, and they've carried out quite a lot of work over the last 12 months. which has been very much appreciated by residents, I'm sure, right across the town. But what I wanted to ask was actually under the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, there is a pathway in the Rift House estate that goes from the back of Gladysworthy Close to Summerhill, and it comes out in between Summerhill and the allotments. It's normally quite a narrow pathway that's uneven, so it has no disabled usage at all because it's not safe. But people do walk that pathway quite a number of times during the summer months, and children use that to get to Summerhill during the summer when schools are closed. So it's normally quite overgrown. It needs quite a bit of attention to get it cut back and into some shape. But it would be very helpful in going forward if that pathway could be considered to become a cycle route, which would give it a more level surface and make it more accessible to other people. So if you could take a look at that, Kieran, I'd appreciate that. And the other thing I wanted to ask, and I'm quite glad really that Mike Young's in the meeting, because I wanted to ask about the potential for 106 claims through planning for the electrification of vehicles and having the necessary standpoints. Because as far as I understand it at the moment, planning does not require us to add to planning requirements for developers to include electric points in the homes that they are currently building, which obviously means the public purse at some point will be requested to pick all this up. And at the moment, there is nothing in 106 for those negotiations to even be mentioned, never mind carried out. So I think that there is work that we need to do, but we also need to lobby government to ensure that new developments do include the necessary number for electric vehicles to be charged. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor James. I'm going to hand over Matthew King.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to respond to Councillor James's last point. The local plan has policy CC1 in the plan, which requires major development to investigate opportunities for provision of electric charging. So it doesn't set a specific level, but it is something that certainly since the plan's been adopted in 2018, we have been asking developers for. It's generally dealt with by condition rather than going into a legal agreement, but it's something that we've had different levels of success with different developers, both residential and industrial units. So it is something that's on the climate change agenda, and certainly something that we're trying to get developers to do more and more. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Marjorie, are you happy with that answer?
Yes, and I just want an answer on the pathway behind Gladysworthy Close.
Yeah, I've noted that one down, Councillor James. I'll pick it up with our countryside access officer to find out what the designation of that footpath is, and I'll come back to you.
Thanks, Kieran.
Thank you, Councillor James. Now I've got one for Councillor Tony Richardson.
Yeah, I'd just like to ask regarding the veg ordinance on Dunbar Road. Is there any time limit when that's going to be done, Kieran, please?
Just having a look at my appendix. 2 seconds, Chair. If it was a scheme that was scheduled for this financial year, it's logged into the system at the moment, and I say we're just working through the backlog that COVID's caused us. I'll get you a detailed timescale after the meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah, and the other one was regarding the drop cabs in Kesteven Road. Now, I was going to fetch it up, but I've already been told off Denise this is going to happen in the next 2 to 3 months, I would think.
Right.
Thank
Okay,
you for that.
Councillor Richardson.
Cheers, Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Tony. Got Councillor Little.
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad to see that electric cars are on there. I think we're lacking behind a lot of other towns and that, and I'd really like to see us really focusing on getting electric car points across the town. The e-scooters, I don't want to be a bit of a... I get a lot of complaints of e-scooters, especially parents getting them on their driving licence, to hire them out from, especially the likes of Ginger and that. Is there any chance we can do some comms to make people aware of so they can't put the child on their driving licence to hire the scooter out, and there's more people buying these for their children as well, which is a bit of a concern, especially with speaking to the police this last week with what they're doing over Seaton on the Dunes estate and the back of Seaton Walkway.
Thank you, Councillor. Kieran?
Yeah, Councillor, if you do have any concerns or any reports of people misusing the scooters, if you do let us know, we can take it back up with Ginger because they can pick up the tracking data and we can trace it back to the exact people who've booked it out. The use of private scooters does remain illegal. It's only the Ginger ones that are legally operated in our town. So the police will clamp down if they see anybody else on a non-Ginger scooter.
Can I come back on that, please, Chair?
Of course.
Could we do a comms then to say that the ones that the children are using are illegal then? It's just, I understand where you're coming from with the Gingers and that, but they are becoming more of a nuisance, especially these past few weeks, and the lights getting lighter. If you could do a joint one with the police or something. I did mention it to the police this week as well.
I'll pick that back up with the police and our comms team and see what the need for that comms is. We'll take it from there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I don't have any more hands up, so we can just move straight to the vote on the recommendations. If there's any dissent, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll be able to just agree to the report. Is there any dissent? No. Thank you very much. Well, we move on to 5.3 instead of 5.2. This is the discount market sales housing policy. Go down to Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek members' approval for the discount market value policy. The policy itself is related to a new type of affordable housing that is permitted under the National Planning Panel policy framework. A DMV dwelling is sold at a percentage of not less than 20% off the market value sale to enable purchasers who would otherwise be unable to afford this property to access the housing market. The properties must remain as affordable units indefinitely, and eligibility criteria must always be met, including through future sales. Given this is a new type of affordable housing, it is necessary for the Council to have a policy which guides the delivery and future retention of these affordable units. Until recently, no DMV units had been proposed for developments in Hartlepool. However, we have seen through Quarry Farm 2, an element of DMV has been included, and the Upper Warren application, which was mandated to be approved at Planning Committee in February 21, also sees 51 DMV units proposed. As we are seeing other developers now wanting to express an interest in delivering DMV units, we need to have a DMV policy. And this has been accelerated by the interest in these types of units. The policy will ensure that the properties remain affordable into the future. The Council needs to keep a register of DMV units to ensure that the sales go to eligible people and to ensure that the resale is through an established process, ensuring that those needing them are the ones benefiting from this type of affordable housing. Discount sales properties represent an element of developer contribution to affordable housing through the planning application. The discount sale properties will have covenants that are contained within the Section 106 agreement. Section 3.7 outlines what the policy document includes. Section 106 agreements will always set out the key requirements for each development in terms of the level of discount from market value, and this is site specific. In line with national guidance, this will always start as a minimum of 20% off the market value. Developers will be required to ensure potential purchasers adhere to the terms and conditions and ensure purchasers complete the relevant application forms. The Council will need to keep a register of each DMV property that is brought forward to ensure that they will be kept as DMV units in perpetuity. The units will also be registered as DMV on the land registry. The proposed policy is appended to this report. Just let my computer screen catch up, sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Kieran.
Not quite finished, sorry, my computer crashed there. The risk implications are if we don't have a robust policy and register in place, then the sales of future affordable homes could go to ineligible occupants. There is not considered to be any financial burden on the authority through the DMV units, and the deliveries will be subject to 106 legislation. Staff considerations will involve additional work through the planning policy, housing strategy and housing services team going forward. And this, as I said, will be in the production of the register. Moving to the recommendations, it's recommended that members endorse the market value property policy to ensure there is a robust policy in place which will guide the delivery and retention of DMV units into the future. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kieran. Sorry for jumping in when you were just.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a good report. I think it's again another element of providing housing for people who desperately need to get on the housing ladder, and I think the robustness of the eligibility criteria is quite strong, which will protect the potential misuse of this process. So we have two councillors interested in coming in. I've got Councillor Amy Prince.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I completely agree. This seems phenomenal. I do have a couple of questions, unsurprisingly. The houses, will there be a difference? So when they're building an estate, will the houses that are going to be sold at full market value be different to the ones that are going to be sold under this proposal, Kieran?
No, what will happen is it will just be that the house will be exactly the same. It'll be the same as the house next door, but it'll have a registry on it that will be a percentage discount, and that will stay with that house forever. So as you walk in the street, you won't be it's not going to have a different colour front door or anything like that. But it just be when we come to resell it, it'll flag it up that somebody's selling that, and that discount needs to be reapplied.
Right. And do we know how many are going to be on Quarry Farm? It doesn't say. It says there's 51 planned for the one in Upper Warren, but it doesn't say for Quarry Farm.
Bring Matthew in for that one.
Thank you, Chair. I believe there are 7 on Quarry Farm. I would have to go away and double check. I think the affordable housing percentage on Quarry Farm 2 was 7.7% of the dwellings, and that was split between affordable rent and discount market sales. And from recollection, I think it was 7 that were discount market sales.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prince. We've got Marjorie, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say that I think the report's very good, and I think the whole policy is actually excellent. It will make a huge difference to people, particularly in villages where the young people are just absolutely priced out normally of living in their home village. So allowing for development in those places, which I know is happening in Hartlepool as well, then if we can get some of those included in this scheme, that would be really helpful.
Thank you, Councillor James. Yes, again, echo both your points, Councillor Prince, Councillor James. This is a great opportunity for people who are priced out, opportunity for them to get forward and get on their housing ladder, which has always been a challenge for a lot of people over the last 10, 15 years. So I don't think there's any more comments on this point, so we'll go straight to the recommendations. Do we have any dissent? Yeah, doesn't appear to be. Well, thank you very much for your support, councillors, on that. So that has been approved unanimously. So we'll go back to 5.2. I believe the speaker is available. No, Denise Mimpany. You're on mute. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right, yeah. Sorry, I do apologise, councillors. So we're going back to 5.2. The PSPOs, that will be over to Sylvia.
Thank you, Chair. At the Neighbourhood Services Committee meeting on the 1st of December 2020, members agreed to begin a consultation exercise in relation to additional public space protection orders. These related to an order in relation to parks that would apply to towns, parks and other identified public spaces, and full details of that are given in 3.18 of the report. And a second PSPO that would relate to drinking alcohol in public places, which would prohibit the consumption of alcohol in certain public places in the town, and the areas included the promenade at Seaton Carew and identified parks and other public spaces. This report is to inform members of the outcome of that consultation and to seek the committee's approval for the adoption of the proposed public space protection orders. Public space protection orders were introduced by the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act in 2014 and gave councils additional powers to deal with antisocial behaviour. Whilst a breach of a PSPO is a criminal offence, it can be dealt with through a fixed penalty notice. Since public space protection orders criminalise certain activities in public spaces and limit or prohibit what the public may or may not do, local authorities must therefore carefully balance the rights of the citizen to enjoy open spaces against the need to protect them from antisocial behaviour. The legislation requires that certain conditions must be met before a PSPO can be introduced, and those conditions are detailed in 3.9 and 3.10 of the report. Public space protection orders can be enforced by police officers and authorised officers from the local authority, and currently that work would be done by the council's civil enforcement officers. Whilst the police are available 24 hours a day, civil enforcement officers operate between 8 AM and 6 PM 7 days a week, and therefore would not routinely be available to enforce PSPOs outside that time. In 9.3 of the report, we list the range of other duties that are carried out by our civil enforcement staff, and should the committee agree to the introduction of additional PSPOs, then the enforcement of those will be in addition to the duties that are detailed. Any extension / variation of civil enforcement officers' working day in order to accommodate the enforcement of public space protection orders beyond 6 PM would impact on service delivery. And as such, without additional investment in this civil enforcement team, any PSPOs that relate to antisocial behaviour after 6 PM would generally fall to the police to enforce. I would remind members that before somebody can be prosecuted or issued with a fixed penalty notice for the breach of a PSPO, they must first be warned and given the opportunity to correct their behaviour. PSPOs do not therefore create an automatic offence punishable by a penalty notice or prosecution. It's the failure to comply with the request to stop the activity or to do what is required by the order of an authorised officer that leads to the offence being committed. The wording of the proposed PSPOs, including the areas, times that would apply, are detailed in full in Appendix 1 of the report. I would highlight to members that the prohibition on the consumption of alcohol does not apply to any area covered by the premises that's got a license, has a license under the Licensing Act 2003. The activities listed in paragraph 3.18 of the report, plus a number of other activities, are already prohibited by virtue of bylaws that have been in place within Hartlepool since 2003. The breach of a bylaw, however, is only enforceable through the courts by means of a prosecution, and it is therefore not appropriate or realistic enforcement option for the many of the less serious forms of antisocial behaviour. Since PSPOs can be enforced by means of a fixed penalty, they can provide a more reasonable, proportionate and practical enforcement option. Moving on to incidents of antisocial behaviour, there were 22 reported alcohol-related antisocial behaviour incidents recorded by Cleveland Police in 2019. This increased to 38 in 2020. 10 of these complaints were made to the council following the introduction of COVID restrictions, where, because of the prohibiting open, licensed premises in Seaton Carew sold alcohol for consumption away from the premises. Patrons therefore consumed their alcohol in a public area alongside the promenade, and various forms of antisocial behaviour ensued. Consultation has been carried out in relation to the proposed PSPOs. The consultation exercise was carried out between the 11th of December 2020 and the 5th of February 2021. This included letters to Cleveland Police Officer, the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, emails to identified friends of groups, and emails to all councillors, and a SurveyMonkey online questionnaire. No objections were received from either Cleveland Police or the Officer of the Police and Crime Commissioner. One written objection was received from Dara Brazai, representing Hartlepool Licensees Association, as that is attached in Appendix 2 of the report. 58 responses were received via SurveyMonkey questionnaires, and these are attached in Appendix 3 of the report. The SurveyMonkey responses were largely in favour of both proposals, with approximately 90% either agreeing or strongly agreeing with the proposal to prohibit the public consumption of alcohol along Seaton Promenade, and 87% either agreeing or strongly agreeing with the proposal to prohibit activities listed in 3.18 of the report relating to parks and other identified spaces. In view of the responses received to the consultation, it is proposed that the adoption of both new PSPOs as detailed in the report be agreed. New signage must be created and erected before the PSPOs can take effect, and therefore, if their adoption is agreed, it's proposed that their formal implementation takes place after the 1st of April 2021. Additional publicity would also be provided to make the public aware of any changes to PSPOs. The committee is also reminded that the proposed prohibitions relating to the use of parks and open spaces, with the exception of the consumption of alcohol, is already covered in bylaws. Therefore, if this PSPSO is not adopted, the activity would remain prohibited, but would be only enforceable by prosecution. The recommendation is the committee approve the adoption of both public space protection orders as detailed in Appendix 1 of the report.
Thank you very much, Sylvia, for your report. Before I bring councillors in, we do have an objection raised by an individual, and you will see in 5.2 of Appendix 2 that the written objection there. So I'm happy to bring in Mr. Rezai to make the case for his side.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm speaking on behalf of Hartlepool Licensing Association. As part of Hartlepool Licensing Association, we have got the Pub Watch group, which we try to promote the town as a safe environment to enjoy your activity. If anybody name passes to us for antisocial behavior, drink related, we would put them on the Pub Watch group, and they get automatic ban for a year from any licensed places to have a drink, whether restaurants or bar. And then it goes on the review after the year, whether it's extended or not. My concern is not about drinking in the parks, it's with the promenade of Seaton Crew. You can go to Tynemouth, you can go to Whitley Bay, and you can go to South Shield. You haven't got a ban, automatic ban that you cannot have a drink. Let's face it, if you put this drink order, that means if somebody has got a picnic and have got a bottle of bubbly, and they open the bottle and they have a glass of bubbly, they have broken the law and they can be prosecuted. We have got power, the police have got power to charge people for drink and disorderly and antisocial behavior. If we are going to put that ban on Seaton Crew, on the promenade, what we are going to give, we are going to give a negative image of Hartlepool comparing to all the other seasides where people can enjoy life in general. You can go to Tynemouth and there is a shed which is a portable seafood, and they have got a lot of deck chairs, and you can buy seafood with a glass of bubbly or glass of Prosecco. And my extreme concern is we would give the wrong image of the town. The reason that the number of antisocial behavior increased last year because all the pubs and restaurants were closed. Sadly, one of the places down Seaton Crew, he was operating as a takeout. So people were buying a lot of drinks, and there was a lot of numbers of people who were gathering there, and pure minority were misbehaving. We have got on the motorway, people might speeding. We don't say nobody should drive the car because some people speed. We have got people throwing tires in a lot of villages, fly tipping. We don't say we shouldn't sell tires. So I think what we should do, we should deal with those minority rather than punishing the majority of people. That's the view of hospitality, and that's the view of myself, that we can manage people. We have got enough power. The police has got enough power to deal with that. And I hope that the councillors wouldn't put the ban on the sit and crew. Thank you.
Thank you, Darragh. Thank you for your input. We have a lot of interest in this. So the first person to be Councillor Tom Cassidy.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with Mr. Razaz on what he's just said there. I think this proposal to ban drinking on the promenade is nothing but a business killer for the hospitality sector. And I understand the parks do need this order. I have no disagreement with the parks needing the order. But the wider seat and tourism area needs a level of flexibility. What if I want to go down from getting a drink from a business and walking down, you know, with a nice cocktail down the promenade? I'm effectively going to be breaking that law. I can't support something that will have a detrimental effect on the economy, as it will restrict restaurants and bars far too much. We need to be supporting businesses, particularly at a time such as this, when we're looking to reopen the economy. Any sanctions that endanger businesses cannot be common sense. What I also say is, if we're going to put a 24-hour ban on the promenade, I personally can't see how we're going to enforce that. We can't even enforce PCSOs to pick up dog muck and get people prosecuted on dog muck. So how the hell are we going to enforce this 24-hour ban on the promenade? It just doesn't make sense. So I think we need to have some flexibility on this problem with the promenade. But with the parks, I do agree with Chair. And that's what I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cassidy. There seems to be quite a lot of strength of feeling here. So I'll move over to Councillor Prince.
Thank you, Chair. I completely appreciate where you're coming from with the businesses, and I think all councillors can appreciate how difficult the last year has been for everyone. And we're elected to represent the majority and try and keep as many residents safe as possible. Whilst I appreciate other places might have success without having an order in place, we need to make sure that Seaton is as much of an approachable place as possible, because we get people who visit us for Seaton Carew. And whilst I know that I don't represent the Seaton ward, I feel as a councillor we should be looking at how we can make our town a place that people want to visit. And I do think that we need to really put this order in place. As it's been said by Sylvia, it wouldn't affect the businesses' beer gardens. So you'd still be able to grab your beer, sit in the beer garden and enjoy that with your friends when, obviously, everything's okay again. And I'm sure that the officers have already thought about the fact that if we manage to bring in more income with fines, that we would be able to employ more enforcement officers, because I think that all the council officers feel frustrated with how spread out our enforcement team are and how much they have to do. Their work is particularly difficult, but as it's been said, that this would support our police officers. So if something's happening out of the hours that our officers work, the police officers would have this from us to support them in dealing with these incidents. So I am fully in support of these. But I do have a question. It's mentioned in one of the comments on the feedback. Does it cover the beach too? So I was just wondering if I could ask that question. Thank you.
Sylvia?
Thank you, Chair. No, it does not cover the beach. It only covers the promenade. area. That's the grassed area and the paved area there.
Can I come back then, Chair? Is that okay? Have we thought then that if we ask people to stop drinking on the promenade or the beach, that they're, sorry, the promenade or the grass, that they're just going to move over to the beach?
Yeah, I've got to say that, yes, people would be able to move on the beach. They would be able to move over to the other side of the road. You know, it's what is reasonable for us to put signage. It's a requirement to put signage up as well. Looking at on balance, we felt that including the promenade was an area that was easily identifiable. It was possible to put all the signage up and everybody could see it. And it did still give people the opportunity to drink elsewhere, like on the beach, if that was something that they wanted to do. You'll also notice it doesn't run right along the promenade. It does end after the children's play area, so it's not covering everywhere. There is an area there as well, so people could move to that area as well.
Thank you very much. Are you okay with that, Councillor Prince? Brilliant. Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Mike Young.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I agree with Mr. Rezai, and I think Councillor Cassidy's put a great point across. We cannot come out of a pandemic and then suddenly be policing the population doubly. I mean, we're at a point in time where we need to be doing as much as we can to support the economy. And policing people, they're already being policed. They're being policed to the hilt over COVID. And we're at a point in time now where people will be slowly coming out of lockdown. These areas will be opening their outside space. These hospitality sector businesses will be opening their outside space first. And to restrict those businesses and the people who use them just does not make any sense to me whatsoever. We are not here as a council to be overly policing, and the promenade to me is an area that should definitely not be within the remit of this order, in my opinion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Young. We've got another councillor, Councillor James.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I don't need to say that I totally disagree with the Tories on this issue. I think it should have included the beach. I think that's wrong, and it should have included the beach, not just the promenade or a section of the promenade. And I say that because, to be fair, if people want to go to Whitley Bay in order to get drunk, well, let them go to Whitley Bay. But Seaton Carew is there for families with young children or teenagers who can't drink. So why should they have to put up with alcohol being available around them? It should be a safe environment for the family to be able to attend Seaton Carew and to enjoy its facilities in a safe and collective setting. So I'm sorry, but I totally disagree. And the fact that people are trying to use the COVID pandemic in order to bounce this one through, I think is disgraceful. The fact is that once we are out of this pandemic, then things will return to normal. And normal for me would be that if you want to drink at Seaton Carew, well, go in the Marine or go in the Seaton Club or go somewhere else and have your drink, whether it's in a beer garden or inside a place. If you want to go and have something to eat and drink, well, go in a restaurant. There are lots of opportunities for you to drink alcohol at Seaton Carew. So I think that it's in our remit to ensure that those environments that are available to families to enjoy open spaces and to play safely, then they should be restricted. And so I think it's actually a weakness not to include the beach. But at the moment, I'll support what's in front of us because I think it's good as far as it goes. But as I said, personally, I think the weakness is it doesn't include the beach.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Tony Richardson.
I'm sorry, Chair. I agree totally with Tom because I think that incident that happened was a one-off. They opened that pub as takeaway. So if they opened it as a takeaway, they had no toilet facilities, and I think that's what caused the problem. To me, we're not a Russia. We're entitled to have a drink if we want to drink. We're not Russia. And we're getting dictated to, and I think this is wrong, totally wrong. Yes, we do know you will always get one element. But why should one spoil it for the rest?
Thank you for your input.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much for your input, Tony. Councillor Sue Little.
Thank you, Chair. As you know, this is about a lot of this is about my ward, and I've absolutely gone into this left, right and centre. It's not a ban. Wait, we will hang on, start again. This is not an alcohol ban as you all think it's an alcohol ban. I would still be able to walk along the seafront with a glass of wine or a can of lager, but it's the antisocial behaviour aspects of the drinking ban that we're trying to enforce. It's so when people start urinating all over the place, exposing themselves in front of families walking along the prom, I have grandparents screaming at me. That's not acceptable, and that's the kind of behaviour that we're trying to stop from Seaton. We're not Whitley Bay. We're a lovely family resort, and I'm so much. That's what we've got to remember. So the coffee bars that was selling mulled wine over the Christmas period, they will still be able to sell that mulled wine over the Christmas period if they go for the correct licence with licensing. Ian's on the line, so hopefully he can clarify a lot of this. The coffee shops along the seafront can still sell a Bailey's coffee. There's nothing stopping from people having a liqueur coffee, as long as they're not driving in my eyes. And you can still have a glass of wine. It's the nuisance that the alcohol causes that residents in Seaton are wanting to stop. We had about 12 weeks of hell in Seaton with people urinating everywhere and exposing themselves. And we do not want that in Seaton. We don't want it in Hartlepool. And I'm sorry, that's just the way I feel. But I'm not a party pooper. I like a glass of wine. It's the antisocial behaviour that some of this drinking causes, which we want to stop in Seaton. And it's not to stop businesses. I'm all for businesses. I take people to nightclubs. I bring them home from nightclubs. I'm not against the alcohol ban. It's the antisocial behaviour, and that's what this PCSO is all about. The antisocial behaviour side. Please tell me if I'm right about the alcohol, please, Ian.
Thank you, Councillor Little. We've got a hand up from Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you're not right. It does say the consumption of alcohol will constitute an offence. So the consumption of alcohol constitutes the offence, and that is the problem with this order. We can't have a situation where people are so restricted. I agree with what Councillor Tony Richardson said. We've got to get to a point where we are not putting people into this position for a minority of people that want to spoil it for the rest. We just can't.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Okay, so there's been a lot of debate on this, and I think I'd like to put in my own perspective on this. I think there's absolute agreement that the PSPOs need to be applied to the parks. That's absolutely true. I think there's support across the board on that. The sticking point, of course, is the Seaton Promenade, and I would just before I finish, I've got a hand up from Ian Harrison. Ian.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just thought I should probably respond as Councillor Little had asked. I'm purely taking a line right down the middle on this one, but just responding to Councillor Little's question and the issue raised by Councillor Young. The PSPOs work in two steps. The first step is that somebody has to be warned about their behaviour. And if they do not correct their behaviour, then the PSPO is enforced. So the carrying of alcohol in itself isn't an offence. But if you become antisocial and an officer tells you to either stop being antisocial or to hand your alcohol over, and you don't respond to that, then you've committed the offence under the PSPO. That might not always be how everybody interpret it, and that might not be a bad thing, but it is not directly a ban on somebody having alcohol in their possession. That's probably all I need to say, unless I have any questions, Chair.
Thank you very much, Ian. We've got Councillor Young, his hand up again.
Yeah, I just think that we then, if anything's open to interpretation, I have an issue with it. So my view on this stays exactly the same. it's either open to interpretation or it isn't. It's either in place or it isn't. And my view is that it should not be in place. I cannot feel any more strongly on this than the businesses in that area. The tourism of this town requires a cosmopolitan approach. And yes, families need to be invited, but there needs to be both a daytime and a nighttime economy. There are two different issues there, and we need both of those things to happen. So we're not leaving things open to interpretation. We are moving forward as a town to grow the economy. That is what this is about. And if we stall that, we've got some real problems. Real problems.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Cassidy?
Yeah, a question for Sylvia. When do these incidents normally take place that you refer to with Seaton Promenade? When is the usual antisocial behaviour usually happening? What times?
I've got to say the antisocial behaviour that we've been aware of on Seaton Promenade, particularly the ones that have been referred to us as a local authority, have been any time, I would say, maybe from mid-afternoon onwards. So that they've been at any time during the day, but I've had complaints from mid-afternoon onwards, I think is probably about the starting time, and then they would run on into the evening.
Can I come back on that, Chair?
Yeah, of course you can.
And these are all alcohol-related offences that you refer to, Sylvia?
Yeah, the majority have been, as has been pointed out, when we went into the lockdown and licensed premises were not able to open and were only selling takeaway. And then we had a heightened problem in relation to people drinking on the grassed areas in the around pubs, and that's where the problems arose, because obviously, as has been pointed out, there wasn't public toilets were some distance away if people wanted to walk to them. A lot of people weren't doing that. The toilets weren't open at the premises, and a lot of the problems have been in relation to that. So they've very much been dealt with. I think I noted it down that between May and June, we received 8 complaints as a local authority, and then we received a complaint in November and another one in December, and they specifically linked to the restrictions that were put in place by lockdowns.
Thank you, Sylvia. We've got Councillor James. Darab, I know you raised your hand there. Did you say you wanted to come in?
Yes, I want to ask a question of Sylvia, really, on the issue that she's just been going through. Is it possible to actually insert a time into this? You know, could you actually say something like 8 p.m. During the summer and 4 p.m. during the winter, which would allow for the fact that, you know, families would be free and safe up until 8 p.m. on the summer. After 8 o'clock, we would not enforce, but before 8 o'clock, we would.
It would be possible to incorporate times into the order, yes.
Well, can I suggest those times then, please?
I
be
would second
incorporated, so that the ban on alcohol usage and so antisocial behaviour connected with alcohol, that there be a ban during the 6 months from April to October at 8 p.m. and from October to April it be at 8 p.m. at 4 p.m. which is, it's dark by 4 p.m. so nobody's going to want children to be playing on the beach or anywhere else after 4 o'clock.
Can I just say we probably need a start and finish time in relation to that?
Well,
so we would have to say, is it from 8 or 8 in the morning?
Well,
we would need to start and finish.
Right, so if you want me to do that as well, then if we were to say during the summer months, it would be from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. that it's a ban. And in the winter, it would be from 8 o'clock in the morning until 4 p.m. There would be a ban.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marjorie. Did I have a seconder for that?
I did.
Okay, I thought you did. Yeah. Okay, we'll park that for the second. But thanks for your input. Darab, you wanted to come back in, and then I'll bring in Councillor Young.
Thanks very much, Chairman. I just wondered if we are reacting too heavily, something which is specially to do with the COVID. The Seaton Crew Promenade has been there for hundreds of years, and it is concerning me that you are going to put a ban just because a place had been operating as a takeaway drinking and you have had quite a few incidents. I mean, we have got the statistic that people are going through a lot of psychological impact, through a lot of special cases with the COVID, with the ban, with the places being closed. I'm 100% sure once the bars, restaurants, everywhere open, everything would settle. And we have got laws to deal with places. And can I just say, I do have business in South Shield area, and I'm not aware of any antisocial behavior, anything more than here with the drink related. And same with Whitley Bay or Tynemouth. And they're very cosmopolitan and people behave properly. I think by putting special measures, sometimes we alienate people and we get more problem. I operated a nightclub for 4 years and I decorated it absolutely nice. I treated everybody with respect. And I can tell you, I only spent £80 to repair something because of vandalism. Because I spent a lot of money in there, I treated people with respect, and people came in and they respected the place. And you might have nightclubs where they have got metal on the walls, they've got all sorts of taking precaution, and it gets more vandalized. My concern is we have got to give a lot of respect to people, and people would respect the place back. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Darragh. We've got 3 more councillors in, so Councillor Young.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, I do agree with the timings issue, but I do overall agree with Mr. Rezai and say that it's just heavy-handed, completely heavy-handed, and I don't think it's something that we should be looking to do for the promenade. It's too important as a tourist area to be imposing any kind of restrictions in this way. Thanks, Chair. Thank you,
Councillor Young. Councillor James.
Well, I just wanted to respond to Mr. Rezai, really, and I'll respond now as well to Councillor Young. The fact is that there has been a huge amount of investment in Seaton Carew, and the businesses that operate there in the main operate during roughly the hours that I've actually outlined. So because they're there for families and children in particular. So I think that the hours that have been put in by myself and supported by Sue, who is at the end of the day a local councillor for Seaton and lives there, so would know the circumstances better than I, then I think that actually makes sense of what could be seen as heavy-handed legislation. But I think that it actually cuts a line through the 2 areas of concern. One, it secures the area for families and for the entertainment of young families in particular, which is why there has been a huge investment in Seaton Carew, to attract those families and to keep them there for the majority of a day, so that they do spend in the local economy. The fact is that the nighttime economy is something slightly different, and I think the hours are reasonable that I've put forward, and I would suggest to members that they support the amendment, whether they vote for the ultimate resolution or not, because if not, then I think we're voting for 2 different things. But I think the hours of operation make sense of it and would actually see the best of both worlds. It would allow for the evening economy to take place after 8 p.m. during the summer, but it would protect children and families before 8 p.m. So I think that it's actually sensible. And then the hours would adjust in the winter when obviously it's dark by 3 o'clock, 3:30. Nobody's going to be going to the beach with kids after that.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Sue Little.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to remind everybody, we did have a drinking ban along Seaton Prom back in, I think it lapsed back in 2017-ish. It's only because somebody forgot to renew it. This is why we're in this position now. So there always has been a drinking ban along the seafront, and it was just, unfortunately, didn't get renewed when it was last ran out. But I'm sure one of the officers will soon jump on me and put me right if I was wrong in saying that.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Tony Richardson.
Many years ago, I lived in the Seaton Hotel. I actually married the landlady's daughter, and we used to have children in there during the day drinking. because it was food and that, and very rarely we'd have problems. And most of the pubs along there had the same thing. Children were allowed to come in. They weren't allowed to go in the bars. They were allowed to come in the Granbys and them. And there was very, very little problems. But I've worked a lot of seaside resorts, and I'll tell you now, they're struggling now to keep the pubs going. The smoking ban killed it. Now you're going to kill it altogether. I'm sorry, so that's, I've been in the pub trade.
Thank you, Tony. I think we've gone on a lot on this. I will bring in two more councillors because I do have a few points I'd like to make on this as well. So, Councillor James.
Chair, I was muted there. So I said, I do think very strongly that members need to consider this very carefully, and we can run the fine line between sense and nonsense. So I think that I would actually encourage them all to support the amendment and then to support the amended motion, because we have to be able to encourage the economy, yes, but all of the economy at Seaton is not alcohol related. And therefore we would actually be losing something very precious, really, to families, and the right to have a safe environment to play in and to exercise as a family. So I think that we should have support the amended motion.
Thank you, Councillor James. I think I'll put an end to the debate, really, because I think it's pretty clear where everybody stands on this issue. But I'd like to point out my own. So I think what's absolutely clear, as I said before, is there is absolute support for PSPO for the parks. I think everyone's in agreement with that. But the just sticking point is, of course, the promenade, and then we've got to put forward. We have somebody put forward a substantive motion to slightly change that. So I'm going to propose that we split the vote. So we have one vote for the parks and one vote for the promenade. And do I have a seconder for that?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. So we will take the first vote on the parks, and then we'll take the vote on the promenade. But before we do that, I'd like to explain my own position. First of all, I think that I'm in agreement with Darab on this, that I don't think the introduction of a PSPO is going to be particularly good for the local economy. I think it sends out a message of being slightly heavy-handed. And I've always been somebody who is very pro-freedom of choice, and I think most people are sensible enough to behave and act appropriately. And if there's any problems, I think that we do have a police force that's able to step in if need be. And as has already been pointed out, we are able to do that. I don't see how a PSPO is really going to help with that in the long run. And as Councillor Young has pointed out quite rightly, that the PSPO is actually consuming alcohol on the promenade. It just seems to be a little bit heavy-handed. So I'm for the first time of being chair of Neighbourhood, so I'm actually going to actively. I'm going to go against the officer's recommendation on the PSPO for Seaton Promenade. So that's just setting out my point of view. So we have a clear position on voting. So we'll move to the vote. Can we have a vote on the parks PSPO? Do we have any dissent on that? Doesn't appear to be the case. Okay, thank you, councillors. So parks PSPO is passed unanimously. And on the Seaton Promenade, can we have a little bit more clarity on exactly the motion? Councillor James, can you remind us exactly what your motion was?
What I said was that from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. during the summer months, so from April to October, there should be a ban on alcohol consumption on the promenade and the beach, in my opinion, but at the moment we're only looking at the promenade. And that during the winter months, so that would be from October to April, then the ban should only be during the daylight hours, so from 8 a.m. in the morning until 4 p.m., which actually leaves quite enough time, in my view, for both economies to boom. And that's got to be the way forward for me. Because, as I said, there is an economy that is not alcohol-based, and that is young families. We don't want to deter them from coming and one bad press report would do exactly that.
Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Young?
Yeah, just for a point of clarification, please, Chair. So if the motion that Councillor James and Councillor Little have proposed and seconded is not accepted, what will happen next?
I believe that what will happen next, we will go to the actual motion, the proposal as put forward by officers, and we vote on that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's. I've just been given the nod that that's correct. So yeah, is that clear? Is that clear to everybody? Yeah. Brilliant. I can see Amy putting a thumbs up there. Brilliant. Okay, so can I? We'll go to the motion by Councillor James, seconded by Councillor Little. I think it's going to have to be a recorded vote. So we'll hand over to Denise.
Thank you, Chair. So we're now voting on the substantive motion proposed by...
No, we're voting on the amendment.
Yes, on the amendment proposed by Councillor James. Thank you, Councillor James. Councillor Tony Richardson?
Against.
Councillor Cassidy? Councillor Cassidy?
We'll come back to it in a bit.
Councillor Howson?
For.
Sorry, my mic's bloody playing up. Against.
So that was Councillor Cassidy against and Councillor Howson is for. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor James?
For.
Councillor Little?
For.
Councillor Prince?
For.
Councillor Tennant?
Against.
Thank you. That's 4-3 in favour, Chair.
In favour. Okay, so that's passed. We'll hand that over to officers to implement. Thank you very much, councillors. There's no need to go back to the original motion put forward by officers. Ian Harrison, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just to clarify the point on the vote there. The issue to do with alcohol actually relates to both Seaton Promenade and the parks. So I was just wanting to clarify that the time restriction that was being mentioned there, does that apply to both the promenade and the parks, or just the promenade?
I believe that just applies to the promenade. So the parks one would be all day, all hours.
Thank you, Chair.
No problem. Thank you very much. So we move now to 5.4, 5-year highway maintenance programme. I'll hand over to Kieran Bostock.
Thank you, Chair. So this is another annual report that we bring forward at this time every year. And the purpose of this report is to seek approval for the next round of the Council's 5-year highway maintenance programme. The condition of our highway network is determined by information obtained by the external scanner data, which is undertaken annually, and this scores the condition of our roads from 0 to 100, 100 being the worst case. For the financial year 21-22, the grant allocation for highway maintenance is expected to be broadly similar to the previous year's application in 1.188 million, and therefore the highway maintenance programme has been constructed assuming this level of funding. Due to a large number of roads in the town having the same rating, results are also supplemented by assessments carried out by our own internal highways inspectors. Consideration is also given to requests received from members and councillors. Members of the public and councillors. In October last year, committee approved a revised one-off scheme of works accelerated from the existing programme following the receipt of an additional grant funding totalling 925,000. The roads and footways included in this maintenance programme are those in most need of repair. The priorities, however, may change over the coming years as one highway can deteriorate faster than another. The proposed 5-year programme is attached in Appendix 1 of this report and is based on the assumption of similar levels of funding. Full reconstruction has been assessed and determined where most appropriate. However, generally treatments such as resurfacing, surface dressing and top chain surfacing have been considered more appropriate as this is cheaper but does have a shorter lifespan. The risk implications There may be a need to reprioritise individual projects as a result of other areas in the network deteriorating faster, requiring emergency works, which could result in a programme adjustment. It should be noted that the Council has finite resources to support one-off capital investment, and these proposals will fully commit the resources available. It currently remains uncertain what impact COVID-19 will have on funding allocations for next financial year. Therefore, a realignment of the programme may be required. Financial considerations: the estimated budget for next year's programme is 1.185 million. Moving on to legal considerations, any temporary orders that will be required to be utilised will be implemented prior to the road closures to undertake any works. On consultation, any additional requests for resurfacing can be made at any time to the highways team, and these will be added to review and included in any next programme refresh. The asset register will be updated to reflect the roads resurfaced. So just finishing off with the recommendations, it is recommended that members approve the proposed programme as shown in Appendix 1, and note this will fully commit the spending. It is also recommended that members approve any changes to the proposed programme be delegated to the Director of Neighbourhoods and Regulatory Services in consultation with the Chair of this committee. This will ensure that the highway network is funding is prioritised to achieve the maximum benefit for the budget available. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kieran. I'm happy with the recommendations and the reports. I don't really have a lot to add to this, but from my own perspective, so I'll just go straight to bringing councillors in. So I've got one from Councillor James.
Thank you. Kieran, can you just give me a rough estimated date as to when the realignment of Brayton Lane will take place? Because that may have some impact on the Macaulay and Marlow, I think's in here as well. It would make sense, in my view, to do them all at the same time.
Yeah, I think that the realignment will be linked to the southwest extension coming forward. So I think the condition of these roads, by the fact that they've been identified on the programme, means they won't hold up till that long. So we need to intervene now to stop us having a problem further down the line.
I don't have a problem with that at all. It's just that in history tells me that normally new road surfaces are damaged quite badly by heavy vehicles shortly after they're laid. So it would be a shame if Brayton realignment then takes place quite shortly after it.
It's one that I'll note and I'll take back to the team. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor James. Do we have any other councillors? Yes, Councillor Richardson.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Kieran regarding Spalding Road, the cul-de-sac. Is this the one when the resurface Spalding Road? Is that the cul-de-sac they missed last time? I think it runs at number 80.
Thank you. I'm not aware that we missed any last time, to be honest. I say it may be that it's a continuation of the scheme, because if we don't necessarily need to do a full scheme at that time, then we'll only do the patches that need doing. So this could be it's a picking up as a continuation of the scheme, much like we did at True Road Drive, where we phased the works.
No, when I talked to the residents there, it was definitely missed, and it has no surface on now. The surface is totally off. The last frost we had took that off, and it was the only one that was missed, that cul-de-sac. That's why I was asking the question. Is that the same cul-de-sac?
Yeah, I'm not aware that we've missed any off the existing programme. The existing programmes have all been delivered as previously agreed by the committee, but it's one I'll pick up, and it may be that it's deteriorated faster, as mentioned in the report, in which case we've picked it up this time round.
Okay, Councillor Richardson. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody else need to come in? No other hands up. Okay, thank you very much. So the recommendation is to approve the proposed programme. Do we have any dissent? No. That's unanimous. Thank you very much, councillors. So we go to number 6.1, Authorities Monitoring Report. Go back to Kieran.
Thank you, Chair. You must be all sick of me now, so I'll not go through this one line by line. You'll be pleased to hear. So this is an annual report that comes forward previously to Regeneration Committee, and I'll start by drawing members' attention to an error within the report in paragraph 2.1. The paragraph refers to the report being put before Regeneration Services Committee and not Neighbourhood Committee. This is a result of constitutional changes at full council in February 21, and I can assure members that it is the right committee today that we've brought this report to. The purpose of this report is to inform Neighbourhood Services Committee of the Authorities Monitoring Report covering the year 1920. For a point of clarity, it is worth noting that this report has been delayed as a result of the pandemic, and the figures quoted in this report relate to 1920, i.e. a time before COVID. The Authorities Monitoring Report is a statutory document that is produced annually by the Planning Services Department on behalf of the Council. It reviews the progress and the implementation of the policies of the local plan and assesses their effectiveness. The report is to be published on the Council website, and a copy of the report is attached in Appendix 1. The report itself is split into separate headings, which are summarised into key themes. Again, I will not go through this report line by line, but I'll read some key headlines as follows. On housing, a gross total of 254 new build homes were delivered in the reporting year. There was no demolition of permanent dwellings, hence the net value remains at 254. This delivery falls short of our baseline of the assessed need of 287, and this has then ultimately pushed our net shortfall up from 85 in 1718 to 160 dwellings in this reporting period. It is anticipated that this shortfall will be addressed in the coming years by the ongoing build-out of various construction sites. This year saw a total of 74 affordable homes being delivered, which was on target. On the economy, employment and town centre, there are no recorded loss of employment land in this reporting year, and no new employment land uptake either. There is no change in the amount of available employment land, which remains at 197.2 hectares. The town centre still continues to develop as a retail hub with A1 and A2 units, as well over 50% in use of the town centre. Sorry, sir. Chair, my laptop's jumping around a little bit. The town centre vacancy rate in terms of the floor space occupied this year has increased from 14.9 to 12%, from 12% in the previous year. This is the highest it's been in the last 5 years. There is currently no need to review the retail policies within the document. There is also no need to review the tourism policies, as these have been implemented as required. Moving on to environmental quality. This year has seen no losses or gains in biodiversity habitat in international, national or local ecology or wildlife sites. However, a designated wildlife site was reassessed in May 2019 and was found the site warrants designation. Accordingly, in June 2019, this site was recommended for deletion. When this deletion has been actioned, this will be reported accordingly in the next monitoring report. There is no need to revise the current natural environment or wildlife conservation policies. Moving on to countryside, rural and historic environment, there is currently no need to review the existing policies for the rural historic environment. On to waste and renewable energy, the total amount of waste arising this year decreased in comparison to last year. The proportion of recycled and composted waste has slightly increased this year from last year from 33.5% to 33.62%. Onto sustainable transport. The local transport plan makes provision for continued investment in our roads and the development of comprehensive network of cycle and linking throughout the borough. These policies are being successfully implemented, as we discussed earlier in the agenda today. Rural plans, the Rural Neighbourhood Plan now forms part of the planning framework and is now published on the Council's website. Work on the Headland and Wynyard neighbourhood plans remain ongoing. The Council continues to actively engage with public bodies to develop strategic policies. Whilst the Council will keep the situation under review, the present stance is that community level infrastructure will not be taken forward. In this reporting year, the Council received a total of 762,000 in developer contributions. Moving to the proposals, it is proposed that the 2019-2020 Authorities Monitoring Report is endorsed, which will allow publication on the Council's website. There is a statutory duty to publish this report on an annual basis. It is recommended that the members note the content of the report and endorse it as part of the local development framework. This report will form part of the planning policy framework, which will provide detailed assessment on the planning policies and their implementation. This will assist in identifying those policies that are not robust or need reviewing, as part of the future local plans. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Kieran. I think it's a very, very full and very strong report. Thank you for your presentation. Do we have any councillors who wanted to come in to comment or raise questions? Doesn't appear to be the case. I think that in that case, we'll just go straight to the recommendation. Do we have any dissent? No. That's approved unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. That brings us to the end of business for committee. I just would like to sign off briefly to thank all members of the committee for their input and their advice over the year or two. And of course, some councillors who were on this committee who are no longer on this committee, they're just as valuable, their input as well. I'd also like to thank officers for their collaboration with not just myself as chair, but with all of you as councillors on this committee. And I'd like to thank, in a way, give it a special thanks really to Councillor James for, taking the time to actually go out and represent the Hartlepool and the Coastal National Group from the RFCC, which she doesn't get any extra for that. She actually takes it upon herself to do that, which is really, really useful and very helpful. So I'm very, very appreciative of that as chair. And of course, I know that Councillor James is retiring from the council, so I thank her for her years of service at the council. Councillor James and I, it's obvious that we've had disagreements over the years, but this isn't the time for that. This is the time just to sort of acknowledge people's work and their efforts for the town. So I'd like to thank you for that, Marjorie. And that extends to everybody as well. Whether you're standing for election or not, best of luck. And at the end of the day, it's the ballot box that counts with regard to separating who wins and who doesn't. So, does anybody wish to bring anything else in?
Can I just make a comment, Chair?
Of course you can.
Because in all of its guises, I've been on neighbourhood services for 22 years in one way or another. So hopefully I bring that experience to bear. And my only comment on what you actually said, John, is that yes, we have had heated debates, but it's always been about policy and design rather than individuals. It's never been personal in my view. And I think that that's healthy. So I would encourage all members to challenge where they need to, but to never become personal. But I've enjoyed my time on this committee, John, and I've enjoyed your chairmanship of it actually, because it's been very clear and very precise, which is exactly what's needed in what can be very complicated decisions. And I'd like to thank the officers that are present as well for their time and their consideration over the years. I've worked with all of them for a considerable amount of time, and I think that we've actually got some excellent officers in neighbourhood services, and long may it be so.
Thank you, Councillor James. Very kind words, and I think we'll just call it a day then. So thank you all for your attendance today, and enjoy your weekend. And it's going to be a busy few weeks, isn't it? So have fun. See you soon.